the modern fifth generational warfare. Tell us about that. Get into that, and then we'll move into the present conflict, and you can update us with all the Ukraine stuff.
Okay, well, I'm gonna. I haven't read these all of these papers yet because I just didn't have time. But basically, this is what's called fifth generation warfare and hybrid warfare, and so there's several papers here. I have two of them here, and there's many professional military science papers. I usually try to read about 3 a week, and I read and study them. But the particular one that I found most interesting, now I did read it, right, but I didn't go through and study it like really hardcore. So I can't, this is just, for everyone's information. I'm not necessarily implying that I disagree or agree with them. This is just, to consider. But this is Lieutenant Colonel Mahaz Nisar. He's a Pakistani Army Lieutenant Colonel. And he has this paper. It's called 5GW. That's Golf Whiskey and Hybrid Warfare: Its Implications and Response Options.
Okay.
That's the first one here, and then the other one is and this is from Salinas University of Science and Literature, and it's by Hamid Khan. It's called Critical Study of Propaganda in Hybrid Fifth Generation War for the Purpose of Narrative Building.
Mm.
And this is pretty deep. Now, he tells the truth. Now, this is the one, I've studied this paper more than the other one, but basically he breaks down that basically that there's the concept, I could just read, you mean just read it? I'll read the abstract.
Sure, yeah. I'm taking notes and writing down the recommendations here to read them later. Go ahead.
Sure. Okay, so abstract. Undoubtedly, this 21st century is the century of peak of modern sciences and media war. With every passing day, the concept of conventional war is getting obsolete. And modern methodology war rooms are actually consist of supercomputers spreading information of your choice, whether factual or not. In fact, it's all based on narrative building and changing public perception. We have seen in recent history how media was misused to achieve desired results in narrative building across the world. In this thesis, I tried to research the effectiveness of propaganda on a global level, how different countries have actively used tools of hybrid war, or may also be called fifth generation war, to achieve geopolitical and strategic targets, despite of knowing the consequences and catastrophic damages of such propaganda. In most cases, it resulted in mass losses of human lives and complete destruction of infrastructures. While in some cases, it also started wars between countries, Yemen and Saudi Arabia, Ukraine and Russia, and others. Also, hybrid war brought many nations on brink of big conventional wars like Pakistan and India, and standoff between China and India. Even in some cases, it could have caused nuclear wars between two countries. For example, North Korea and the United States of America, Pakistan, and India. As case study, I have studied Iraq War, U.S. and NATO invasion, which was legitimized by United Nations approval on reports about presence of weapons of mass destruction, which was later proven all false. And all reports, media reports, documents, everything was proven fabricated to build certain narrative to mislead the entire 170 plus member nations, the world, and the UNO. Now, that's the United Nations Organization.
Yeah.
Hence, it is not only one of the most recent class examples of white propaganda. This might be considered as biggest successful propaganda campaign of the 20th century, which resulted into millions of Iraqis' undue massacre, a complete destruction of oil-rich, economically stable country, which caused loss of trillions of dollars and complete infrastructure demolition. Furthermore, in this thesis, I have discussed fatal impacts of false propaganda, types of propaganda, importance of knowing and countering propaganda, and hybrid war tools to secure national interest. A chapter of this thesis explains how a state can use propaganda for multiple uses to divert attention from its failures and achieving success in certain narrative building. A brief critical study of strategic affairs based on media warfare is also part of this thesis. Every state desires to secure its strategic interests. Which types of methodologies being used in modern day policy making of strategic affairs is also part of this research. There is no doubt every country like to achieve best for a strategic interest, but what kind of illegal, unethical, unlawful, inhumane, and ill methods are used as state agenda is also discussed. Since our planet is already facing many challenges of its destruction, environmental issues, COVID-19 type pandemics, and others, then why risk of world war, nuclear wars due to illness, of controlling or conquering the world? All this is happening on the name of strategic interests.
Narrative of the last 3 years, Twitter files, right, really showed that
Sure.
was absolutely what's going on.
Well, see, this is the Twitter is essentially well, I guess Elon Musk owns it now, but that was built with taxpayer funds.
Right, it was created by the NSA or some arm of it, right?
Right, that was DARPA, or maybe DARPA was or ARPANET. That was the internet.
Right. So
the internet was originally designed for secure, anti-EMP protected strategic communication nodes in case of nuclear war.
Yeah, I just thought it was really interesting that first part where you talked about that, basically supercomputers can churn out disinformation narratives across the internet.
Well, that's what it is. It's AI, and let's break it down like this. Okay, so this is what the U.S. Army calls these. They have this concept of mosaic warfare, and they also have a concept of this multiple domain operations in multiple domains. So we have the cyber war, we have a logistics war, we have a health war, a information war. We have the kinetic end, that is fighting, right? What we're seeing in the conventional war, and this is the main here. But the main thing is it's probably 80% logistics, 15 to 18% propaganda, and 2 to 5% depending on actual kinetic operations where weapons are being shot at targets, and targets are either suppressed or they're eliminated. That's
crazy. What a huge change in warfare.
Right. Well, I mean, this goes back to William Lynn. He was one of the individuals that was, William Lynn, and he's a U.S. military scholar, Colonel Keith Nightingale, and he's U.S. Army Captain John F. Schmidt. He's Marine Corps. Colonel Joseph Sutton, he's U.S. Army, and Lieutenant Colonel Gray Wilson. And these men have written about about 5 generations of warfare. This hybrid warfare is using oblique or means other than war. So you could call it operations other than war, or you could call it less than conventional war, or you could call it irregular war. And the Russians back during the Soviet Union, the Spetsnaz, they were training for this. And remember, I had told you about that the Lyndon LaRouche intelligence product, right, from the late 1980s.
Yeah.
Well, it's from 1985. It was the Imperial War Plan for 1988.
Uh-huh.
And in that intelligence product, he talks about these types of weapons that basically the Soviet Union had designed, and these were directed energy weapons. They were not like, you had the particle beam weapons, the lasers, masers, phasers, and all that. But this is something like a microwave weapon or scalar waves, right?
Uh-huh.
And that they had developed these tactically, that they could mount them in a van or a vehicle, and it's also known now that they could physically move them. They even had smaller devices that you could put in a backpack. Because I don't know if you had heard about the Havana syndrome.
Yeah, I've heard of that.
Okay, well, basically the U.S. government, of course, anytime they deny it, that means it's actually happening. So they officially denied that anything was happening, but it's someone was testing those types of weapons on our embassy.
Yeah.
And there's also other rumors. I've heard a lot of rumors out of the Cold War about these types of operations. It was interesting. Just a part of this. See, this. I'm going to give you. Well, here I saw that you released a new video on Jim Jones.
Yeah.
Jim Jones is a part of this hybrid warfare. The Jim Jones now. If you looked into, I don't know if you went in and looked at the various executive intelligence reports. These were our weekly. Well, of course, Lyndon LaRouche is passed, but these weekly intelligence products that they put out, they named people. They had names of individuals in the Carter administration, and I think somehow Zbigniew Brzezinski was involved with Jim Jones and certain key people in the Carter administration. For example, now I don't have this information in front of me, so I'm going off of memory. That Jones was stealing Social Security money from checks from the people that he had captive in South America, and that people had found out within the government, and they had cut the checks off and cut the money off, and that someone inside, I'm talking about the cabinet of the Carter administration, subverted that and turned and kept the checks coming.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Yes, sir. Go ahead.
Yeah, that does make sense. Did you hear? I interviewed that Jeremy guy from Covert Action Magazine, and he was saying that he thinks that it also related to Cold War operations in Guyana. It's kind of setting up arms trafficking.
Right, remember, they murdered a senator.
Yeah, that's what we talked about. But he was bringing in the angle of it being, part of setting up Cold War operations down there.
I'm not familiar with that. I just know, that this was some type of CIA mass mind control, and it seems that Jim Jones was involved with. Wasn't he a doctor? Wasn't he an MD or something? A psychologist or something?
I've forgotten his background. I don't remember what his background is. I did a podcast with the guy who'd researched that 8 years ago, and I don't remember Jones's background.
Right. Well, it seems that he was that other maniac, the Dr. Death. What was his name? The man that was doing the assisted suicide?
Kevorkian.
Yeah, Kevorkian. Kevorkian was involved with the U.S. government too, and he was, I think, over there at one of the VA hospitals.
Yeah.
And he was trying to do experiments on dead veterans' corpses.
Yes. Right. Yeah.
And this seems like the same kind of angle where you have protected, kept individuals, and you allow them. You kind of like allow them to do criminal activities.
Yeah.